Steve Welch, a resident here since the sewer plant originally went in, I'll say, mid-70s.
Teresa Wilson, resident a little over 19 years.
And Larry Capsell, resident at Ridgeline.
And Ron Johnson, 20 years.
All right, very good. Larry's up there doing the camera and the sound and stuff. Larry's also on our committee, and Larry's a deacon here at the church. And we really wanted to say thank you to the church and Larry for allowing us to use the facility, and it didn't cost us anything, so it was a big plus for us. I hope you're comfortable with it. We're also recording the sessions here, and we'll put it on the website, county website, so that those who couldn't make it can see the presentation. And after the ballots go out, we hope to have another community meeting, because there'll probably be more questions and stuff, and that date will be also announced, and we'll receive a letter as well. So what we're going to do is run through our presentation. We're going to try to go through the presentation completely, and if you would hold your questions to the end, that'd be great. Some of it's kind of techy, some of it isn't. Bear with us if you would. We want to kind of give you as much information as we can without getting you all to sleep. So feel free to ask us questions afterwards. So with that, Ken Bang's going to take the first section.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate all your help with the committee here. I want to thank Larry for letting you use the facility. It's really gracious of him, and also all of you guys for taking your time out to spend with us on your holiday weekend and trying to figure out what's going on with the sewer.
You want to go down a slide?
The slide, I'm sorry, it was working just a second ago.
Let me restart it. I think that's what's wrong.
So just a quick outline, we go over what special districts are, what the advisory committee is, go over our current issues and needs, talk about some financing solutions, and then talk about any questions at the very end. And so what is a special district? Special districts are entities created so that we can maintain sewer, water, public improvements, community improvements for long term. They have specific boundaries, they collect revenue. Next slide. And so they're there to maintain long-term impacts for projects. The governing board is, or your board of directors is the board of supervisors. What Bass Lake is a county service area, CSA 2A and 2B. You probably see that on your invoices or your tax statements. There's other forms of governance, like Bass Lake Water Company, that's a private company, and they're regulated by the PUC.
Okay, we're done.
Tell me when we're close.
So that's it, and then I'll let Mark come up and talk about the condos. Just a little bit.
All right. Anybody ever live in a condo association? You know you have a board, and your common area, and you pay for all that stuff, right? Comes your dues, sometimes includes your insurance. And what we really want you to know is this so-called special district. When you hear the county, people think of the county, oh, because county government, my taxes go to pay for things. Okay. County should run it. Special districts are different. Special district is a legal process to create an entity, and they call it a special district. It's not a corporation. It's not a government thing per se. It's somewhere in between government and a privately held company. we actually own the special district. We're within the umbrella of it, just like a condo association. In the condo association, you have private and public space, and the public space is maintained by the management company. And I want you to replace the county the county with the word management company. They're the management agency. Okay, so when we talk about the county, it's not state taxes you pay and stuff like that. We're paying for that service, and we own it. We own all the problems that come along with it, all the fines, the whole thing. We own it, just like a condo association does.
Go down a slide.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm going to use an example here, a swimming pool example. So in a condo association, there's a swimming pool, and everybody gets to use it, and it requires us to hire a company to clean it, take care of it, manage it. And the health department comes by and says, oh yeah, you have to have that lifeguard sign. And you have to have a certain amount of chlorine in it. And you have to maintain that system to a government regulation. Okay? But when the government says, hey, that's not right, you have to fix it, they're going to fine you for it, shut it down, or you're going to pay to fix it. And our sewer system comes into that same type of situation. They're going to fine us. We really can't shut it down, but we do have to fix it, and we have to maintain it. So we are responsible for all the regulatory issues surrounding that operation of that swimming pool and condo complex, or in our case, our sewer system. So it's just a really important point. The county sent out a survey a little bit ago, asked people about what they thought about systems in general, and like 40% of the people had no idea that they had to pay for the service. They thought it was just a taxing thing. So it's a really important point that we should know. A little bit of background about our sewer advisory committee. We started this thing in 2009. A bunch of homeowners got together when we heard that there were problems in the district, notice of violations, and we had to figure out what was going on. And so we formed a committee. There's 13 of us on the committee, homeowners and business owners on this committee. And we've been meeting since 2009, working on this project. So there's a lot of hours put into it by our group. And we've already saved the community a significant amount of money by changing how it operates a little bit. And basically, you know, watching what our use that word, managers are doing for our system. They've been extremely cooperative and helpful, providing us the information we asked for, and providing us the technical expertise to give us the background. One of the neat things about our community, our committee, is we have a number of engineers who sit on the committee who are also familiar with sewer type of operations, have some of that background. So we're very fortunate in that respect. All right, Tom, you're next up.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tom Thomas, and like I said, I'm a full-time resident here since 2005. I don't know if any of you have ever seen this in Sunset Magazine, but it was there, and it named Bass Lake as one of the West's best lakes. Okay. Next one. One of the, well, actually, the whole committee was driven by the following goals throughout this whole process. The first one being maintain or improve our quality of life. To ensure that our livelihood, property, and business remain viable. The second one is operations and maintenance costs. Currently, our maintenance costs are exponential. Just like the discussion of a car. You buy a brand new car, you keep it for a while, you do some regular things like inspections, tire inflation, just regular maintenance. And that's a pretty level occurrence for the first 5 years. But after 5 years, you start having engine overhauls. You need to replace the suspension. And this is where we are right now with our sewer system. We're having to really, our costs are ratcheted up by replacement of parts that are obsolete because of the age, which is very costly. The third item that we were driven by for this process as a committee was to make sure that we maintain regulatory compliance to avoid fines, which we will pay for. Currently, we are under a notice of violation with the Regional Water Quality Board. And under that notice, we've had to file a plan, or the county's had to file a plan and abide by it. And no fines or penalties have been levied so far, but they can and they will happen if eventually we don't make some upgrades. Next slide. This is kind of the meat of it all. As a sewer committee, we agreed the following if we're going to go through this upgrade. To minimize the impact to the community during construction, we want to make sure that your livelihood is not disturbed during the construction process. We also want an efficient sewer system by controlling maintenance costs, which I've already talked about, the exponential portion of the curve that we're currently on. We want to significantly reduce odors. That's been a problem in the community. I've heard folks talk about it, and we're going to try to do something about it. We're going to be doing, right now we've got kind of slug flow. If you kind of think of your sewage moving down from station to station, pump station to pump station, it moves in slugs, so it's stale. It doesn't move at all until a Morcoid switches on, then the pump station lifts it to the next pump station. Well, as you know, as it stands there, you're going to get odors. With the new lift stations that we're proposing, we're going to have a dynamic flow atmosphere or operation, which will have a constant flow. In addition to that, they're planning on putting chemical additions at lift stations 1, 5, and 9. This all will help contribute to reducing or significantly reducing our current odor problems. The next thing is be compliant with federal and state regulations. As I mentioned before, we are currently under a notice of violation that we're operating under. And by doing the upgrade, that continued governmental oversight, and we've all heard about big government, and I'm one who says, let's keep them away as much as we can. But by being in compliance, we can do that. The next item was protect seasonal streams and groundwater. We all want to make sure and ensure that we don't disturb our resources that we have up here and the wildlife. Right now, our spray fields, they have overflown into our seasonal creeks and streams, and that's why we have a notice of violation currently right now. Our storage pond at the wastewater treatment facility has cracks and fissures because the concrete has gotten old, 30 years plus, and it is also seeping into our seasonal creeks as well. The next item that we must have, if we're going to do this upgrade, is make sure that we handle our seasonal peak flows. You all know that we have a tremendous amount of people up here during the summer tourism season. Our average daily flow, annual average daily flow of sewage is about 144,000 gallons a day. During 4th of July, for example, that weekend, the week before and the week after, we're averaging anywhere from 450,000 to 500,000 gallons per day. Did I hear somebody? That's a lot of, yes it is. The next item is protect property values, business viability, and avoid bad press. One thing we want to do is make sure that if we want to make sure we never have a spill, we never have an overflow of our facilities, that will only bring bad press to this community. That's going to hurt our businesses up here. It's going to hurt our property values. We want to avoid that. That's a must-have if we do this upgrade. And last but not least, we want to avoid privatization. Privatization would mean basically that we would have to, as a community, have to get a private operator in here to work the sewer system instead of the county. More than likely, that private entity, under the notice of violation that we currently have, would have to go through the sewer upgrade anyhow. At probably a higher cost than what we're proposing. In addition to that, and what I think is most important, is the fact that you will lose your voice if we go private. Currently, right now, all of you have the opportunity to speak your grievances to the Board of Trustees, at the Board of Supervisors in Madera, for any complaint that you have regarding the sewer system. If it went private, you'd have to travel to Sacramento and make your presentation before the Public Utility Commission. And they don't listen very well. Okay? They don't know, they're not in touch with your concerns like the Board of Supervisors would be, your trustees. Next slide. Our profound attitude, the committee, having a great lake to enjoy, and friendship and community that we all cherish here at Bass Lake. Sparkling blue waters contrasted by towering pines. That's the way I want to keep it, and I hope that's the way you want to keep it. My last thing is a little bit of history. 1904, Crane Valley. William Haskell and William Day saw the economic and development opportunity and built the Pines Resort. Today, Bass Lake is a resort village, attracting families for its way of life, with shops, private homes, and rental cabins. Let's keep it that way. I'll now transition to Christina, and she'll talk about the engineer's report.
Thank you, Tom. You did a great job discussing all the problems that are facing the Bass Lake community. And all those problems led us to find a consultant to provide us with an engineer's report that could give us solutions to all these issues that we're facing. And last year we commissioned West Yost Associates to look at the whole system, overall collection system, spray-filled disposal system, and the wastewater treatment plant to find solutions to those problems. And they made several recommendations in this engineer's report. And the advisory committee, the sewer advisory committee, did an excellent job. They did their due diligence, and they went through everything in that report, and they wanted to make sure that every issue that the community was facing would be remedied in that report. So they gave their approval, and we took that to the Board of Supervisors in April of this year, which this report was finally approved. Next slide. So just as Tom had mentioned, we had an issue at our spray-filled disposal system, and we were issued a notice of violation by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Now, who is that, you ask? That is the regulatory agency which allows us to discharge our treated wastewater onto to land. This land is located on U.S. Forest Service property. It is about 106 acres in size. However, our disposal system only is using 60 acres, 30 of which, about 28 acres of which is usable at this time because of deficiencies in the irrigation system. So we're needing to remedy that issue very quickly. We're having problems during the winter months when we're supposed to be, we have this maximum storage of all this sewer or treated wastewater, and we need to dispose of it, and we're running out of capacity at our storage pond. So basically we're wanting to make these improvements and expand our irrigation system, and we want to make sure that we provide the adequate capacities there. Other issues that we're facing right now are at the wastewater treatment plant. We're wanting to reline or resurface the concrete structures. We're wanting to replace equipment that has been in use probably since the beginning of its construction. Another issue, as Tom had mentioned, is the long detention times that we're seeing in the collection system, which are creating those odors that you are smelling at several lift stations. Also, we have I believe we have 11 lift stations around Bass Lake, which are in desperate need of improvements. New pumps are needed, and these pumps are so old, they're really antiquated. So we're going to need new pumps, new electrical systems, new controls. Let's see. And basically, we're just wanting to maintain compliance. We want to make sure that we provide uninterrupted service to everyone, and that we don't create significant issues where we'd be fined significantly by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Norman.
Thank you, Christina. I'm Steve Norman. I'm the Special Districts Manager. Just a little background. I've worked as a licensed utility worker here in the mountain area, supervisor of the Bass Lake plant. So I'm familiar from the ground up or below the ground with the system. And as special districts, we operate and try to maintain its existing system, and it's been here since the mid-70s. Everything has a lifespan, and it's one of those things that doesn't fall apart all at once, but you replace parts, and pretty soon your operating costs end up rising higher than what would work for you for maintaining it, and it's better to do an upgrade than it's like building a car by parts. You can do it, but you can buy a lot of cars by the time you pay for each part. So what we've done so far is kind of done that. We've used our operating budget to replace parts and pieces, and it's made our operating budget higher than it should be, and these improvements will help. As you can see on this, the sewer operation and maintenance is an annual fee. I was involved in increasing the rates in 2009, and because we were just taken away from our reserves. We had a couple of years after that we were able not to pull from our reserves, but we're back to pulling from our reserves. Again, it's for the maintenance or replacement of equipment, and when we did the rate increase, we also included a consumer price indexing. You see it every year. It goes up whatever the percentage of the CPI. 1 year it actually went down 0.8%. But when we did that rate increase, we didn't put any money into the concept of replacing the existing facilities. So, and when we met with you, then we said that this was just for operations, this was just to make us go into the black instead of the red, but that there was improvements that were needed, that we'd be coming back to you. Guess what, we're back. And next. Okay, and this slide here you can see this is basically our operating budgets. It's broken down. After the description, the first columns are the budgeted amount and the actual expenditures for this year. And this was, the actuals were as of April. Revenues have come in since then. We're relatively close to the expected revenues. We're about 568,000 roughly revenues as of Thursday. Also, the expenses have gone up. We're about 500 and $600,000 on expenses. So right now, we're not closed out the year. We're in a little bit of a positive. But part of the reason for that is we transferred $100,000 out of our operation, or our accumulated, basically our savings account. So, you can make budgets work that way. If you go back and look at the next columns, 2008 and 9, that was prior to the rate increase in 2009-10. The rate increase actually was effective as of 2010-11. And you can see there, we didn't have to, that red box up there is a transfer from savings. You can see in 8-9, $500,000 was transferred back. And that was in part to do some equipment replacement and also to do study, sewer system management plan, a number of issues. In 2009-10, there was about 146,000, but we didn't have to transfer it in the next 2 years, but then coming to this year, we did again. So one of the things that we need to do is look at accumulating money to make our replacements. The next red box down shows you if we're having a revenue is coming in higher or lower. If it's in parentheses, revenue is lower. If it's not in parentheses, it means our revenue is higher than our expenses. So looking at this, you can kind of get an idea of where the monies have gone. The next slide here basically is a summary of that. Over the past 5 years, the operation expenses have exceeded the revenues. We've also started paying the indirect costs to the county that for county overhead, that board of supervisors, county council, that kind of stuff. And so that is an added expense to operating, that's coming out of your operating budget. And we're currently using savings to cover our shortfalls. And at the current rate, 2015, 2016, I won't have any operating reserves to fall back on. So we're kind of up against the end of it here. We've got to make cover these costs, and we can cut our operation expenses if we end up making these improvements, so that we're not using our operations expenses for those purposes. Our biggest expenses are PG&E, electrical power, and labor, if in a normal operating budget. If we're doing capital improvements, those can run up real fast in a system this size. And I think that's it. We'll be glad to answer any questions at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Steve. And you guys saw those. Basically, we're overspending about $100,000 in the operating budget, and we're having to pull monies out of the savings accounts and not putting monies back into the savings accounts. And so you can see we have lots of shortfalls. And so some of the needs that we need to do here is we need to increase our service charges, the O&M, operation maintenance charges, so we're positive cash flow and get out of the red. We need to start funding an infrastructure depreciation replacement fund, kind of a savings account, so that in the future we don't have to have massive amounts of increases to repair these things in the future. We need to fund the spray field and treatment plant improvements. As you can see, Christine talked about a lot of the issues that we have with this, the wastewater treatment plant and discharging the effluent. We also need to fund the wastewater improvements to address the peak holiday flows to avoid sewer spills into the lake. Tom did a really good job of indicating why we need to make sure that is resolved. And then we also need to fund a collection system replacement. The sewer lift stations and those things are all antiquated, so we need to replace those as well. Next slide.
Yep, it's not moving back here either.
Is it in the back there anymore? Let's see there.
I'll have to restart it and go to whatever slide it may be. It looks like around slide 26 or so.
Oh, that's some technical difficulties.
We'll need to restart it here.
It's locked up. You'll restart it.
Apologize for the technical difficulties. Always gotta run into something. It's gonna be never be perfect.
Slide where we're on about 28 or so. Hurry that.
No, back the other way, I think. Back.
Go back up.
The other.
Okay, so right there.
Right there.
Let's go to the next one, right there. So Tom talked about a high mileage vehicle, and this is kind of where we're at. Well, the facility was built back in 1976. We've used its lifetime, and it's extended beyond its lifetime. And so we're at a point where we're kind of like a really old high mileage vehicle. It's not very fuel efficient. It's got low MPGs, high cost to operate, increased maintenance services and repair costs. It's not reliable. It might break down on you. You may never get to work. Have to get it towed. It's probably not very environmentally friendly. It's probably a gross polluter. It's not very comfortable. It doesn't have the latest and greatest features. No Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, no comfy seats, no safety gadgets, no airbags, no seatbelts. The cost of operation and maintenance exceeds the cost of financing the vehicle, and so that's kind of where we are now with our equipment and our sewer system. Where it's old, it's antiquated. We use it beyond its lifetime. The cost that we have to repair it every year is approximately anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000, $250,000 in repairing pumps and lift stations and stuff. Next slide. And so the study talked about, the recommendations talked about a total project cost of $12 million. And the district funded $100,000 to pay the consultant to do their study and county staff time to review the reports. And so to date, the project would cost approximately $12.1 million. Divided that by the total 1,800 sewer units out there, per sewer unit cost would have its fair share of approximately $6,694 per sewer unit. Next slide. And so our thought here is to go after some bonds, sell bonds, raise bonds, so we get the revenues up front and make the improvements. And so with the sell bonds, the cost to carry the bond, to insure the bond by having bond counsel and sell the bonds is approximately $1.8 million. So total financing amount of $14 million, but that assumes that not everybody pays their sewer units up front. Some people have to find the means and ways to pay their sewer unit values up front. So the total finance amount by the time it actually goes to close will probably be a lot less than this. And here I've got a couple slides showing 20-year payments, 30-year payments, and 40-year payments, and the interest rates with it. Next slide. And so the bond assessment is a Prop 218 process. Prop 218 is Proposition 218 voted by the voters of California. They basically said to the government, no new taxes without us approving and voting on it. And so this is a good thing for all of you guys and the county as well. And so this is a process we have to go through. We have to mail out ballots to each and every single one of you. and all the ratepayers, all the property owners, and we have to weigh all the ballots, and the ballots are weighed based on proportion to the amount of proposed sewer assessment to be levied on your parcel, basically $1 per dollar. It has to have a majority vote of 50+1 of the ballots cast, and in order for the vote to be approved. And if there's a majority protest the opposite direction, then the bond assessment doesn't get approved. Next slide. And so here's the financing solutions. Basically, the project cost prior to issuing a bond is $12 million. The per unit cost is $6,694. You have that option to prepay those sewer units up front, per sewer unit up front, and that way you don't have to carry that and have to have that financed on your parcel. If you finance it, obviously the bond cost just to carry just to insure the bond and sell the bonds is $1.8 million. That's an average bond cost of $1,000 in additional to the sewer unit value just to carry the bond. That doesn't include interest. So the total bond cost would be approximately $7,740 without interest. We'll get to the interest part right now. Next slide. And so depending on what the community decides to do and the Board of Supervisors on how long the term of financing to be recommended to be sold, we have a 20-year, 30-year, and 40-year indicated above. What the monthly amount is on your monthly sewer charge bills would be an additional $53, $54 for 20 year, 30 years $44, and a 40 year $40. The interest, just the interest paid on the 20-year would be $9 million, 30 year would be $14 million, and 40 year would be $20 million. I really recommend the 20-year. The difference between the monthly payments between the 20 and 30 years is approximately $9 a month, and you're saving about $6 million in interest. And a lot of the equipment, like pumps and lift station equipment, they generally only have a lifespan of 15, 20 years, so it's probably not very prudent to bond on equipment that have a 30-year or 40-year bond on equipment that will last 15, 20 years. Not to say we can't repair it, make modifications, continue using the majority of the parts for a long time. There's still several parts, several object things like the lift stations, the concrete, all of that has a much longer lifespan. So it's still doable. Next slide. So here's what we're proposing in a nutshell to solve several issues. Sewer, the O&M. If the bond is approved, the O&M, we think that can stay the same, $31.25 or $375 annually. This is on a per sewer unit, and so if you own multiple sewer units on your parcel, obviously you have to multiply that to the per sewer unit cost. So that's probably why you have a more or less of a sewer bill. But if you own one sewer unit, then it's $375. We need to fund a infrastructure depreciation fund so that in the future we don't have to come back and ask for another huge bond like this. We slowly accumulate the monies that over a long period of time, 20, 30 years, 40 years, we're going to significant amount of money to do these repairs, and in the future we don't have to come back to you again for another bond. And assuming that you go through a 30-year bond repayment, the monthly payments would be $44.38, and so your total monthly per unit cost would be $80.63. I like to talk about things in monthly because it's easier for me to budget that way, easier to understand that way. Obviously, your guys' sewer charges are assessed annually, and that also causes us problems because we get revenues twice a year. Obviously, it comes through with your first and second installments, your tax bill, and by the time we get to April of every year, our available cash balances in the account basically get down to about $12,000, $13,000, $14,000. Really like difficult to continue to pay bills, pay PG&E, pay the staff, and so we need to work on changing the billing cycles as well. Cash flow is a challenge for the county, especially this district. We operate very much like a business, and that we have monthly operational costs. We don't get revenues every 6 months. Next slide. And so the committee asked, what does other sewer districts in the county pay? And we looked at Oak Ridge Sewer, they're right across the way here. What they're currently paying monthly is $49 for their service charge. They have a standby fee of $8.33. And their bond repayment, they raised the bond recently, about 4 years ago, $10 per month. But they have a lot more sewer units, they have a lot more connections, they have a lot more people paying into the pot, so their costs are a little bit reduced in their bonds. Next slide. And so the question is, what happens if the bond doesn't get approved? What happens if the bond doesn't get approved? What does the county do? What do we do then? If the bond doesn't get approved, we recommend that we raise the O&M cost to generate additional $100,000 annually, so that we stay out of the red and back into the black, stay positive. We need to increase our savings. The savings down at the bottom. Increase the savings, $60 per year per sewer unit, so we can generate about $100,000 a year to put into a savings account so that we can make future improvements, future repairs, so we can come back to you for more money. And in regards to the wastewater treatment plant, the notice of violations, the lift stations, all those issues, we basically need to try to fund all of those through your monthly service charges or annual service charges. So in order to do that, we need to raise about $4 million. So then in the next 3 years, we raise about $12 million, which was the cost of the project. And we do that through the service charges rather than through a bond. We do that for the next 3 years. And so annually, that would be about $2,000 per sewer unit. Next slide. And so this is kind of what it would look like. Your monthly service charge would be $36.67. Depreciation fund, $183. Asset, and then improvement fund, $60. To get those two upside down. And then basically it would be about $2,300 increase annually. And we accomplished a couple of things. We got out of the red back into the black. We've got monies put away into our savings accounts, and we've got monies set aside to make the same repairs that we needed to make in the next 3 to 5 years. Next slide. So in summary, Bass Lake has received notice violations for non-compliance with provisions set in our disposal permit. We have potential spills during peak holidays or 4th of July, or when the lift stations don't work, they fail. There's potential that the sewage backs up and comes out of the sewer manholes, and so there's that potential for spills. We're depleting our available cash balances and savings accounts, and projected to have a zero fund balance by 2015-2016. The projected cost of the project cost is $12 million. And if the bond says it's not approved, we'll need to look at raising service charges so that we can fund the improvements. That's pretty much it. Next slide. If you have any questions, I guess the next question is, what happens if the alternative solution of raising the rates, that doesn't get approved by the people as well? Then the question is, what happens after that? Obviously, I wouldn't be doing my job if I would just continue to not pay the bills, not pay the PG&E bills, not pay staff time, let the system fall apart. I wouldn't be doing my job, and so we'd have to look at other things as well. But that's something that we want to do.
So since we are recording this, we're going to walk around the microphones and your questions so that people can hear that too and hear your questions.
When you're mentioning units, is that a house or is that number of toilets in the house?
So a unit is generally kind of broken down to per house. There's some commercials projects in here, or businesses that they're a little bit different. They have equivalent sewer units, and so they may have a few more. Houses.
We appreciate the enormous amount of work you put into this, and if there is the potential for the numbers to slide a little bit in time because of the addition of unanticipated stuff and the change of the finances in the world and all that kind of stuff. So what happens if we paid our $6,000 or whatever now, what happens? Do you come back again, I guess, with these other costs, which could be equal to that?
Good question. So there's three things going on. We need to look at raising the O&M rates, so that's separate from the $6,000. So we also need to look at setting some money aside into the savings account, so that's separate from the $6,000. So if you guys do decide to go for the project and you do bond or don't bond, and you pay the $6,000 up front, then you're not having to bond for it. That's pretty much your fair share. So in addition to having to raise the O&M and also the savings account funds, there's really nothing else the county can come back onto you for. We've also included some contingencies in those estimates from the engineers, so we have approximately anywhere from 10 to 15% contingencies to account for future changes in costs as well.
Part of our challenge is that we had to come up with a number to ask for money before we had the bids. So the engineers created their best guess scenario of all these things broken down, and as you said, we built contingencies in it. So if the bids come in lower, then the money will be saved. If we raise too much money, we might be able to lower costs down the road. But if they came in significantly higher, we might have to come back to the community or not do some things. Either way.
Question back here, Mark. Got a question back here.
Jim Flournoy. Jim Flournoy, Island Drive. We've been around since '57. I'd like to point out well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Little Church of the Pines for hosting this meeting. And I'd like to point out that this sewer system we have is so much of an improvement over the old septic tank system that there's no going back. Third thing is that bonds should be at historic rates, low rates right now. I know in my own city they've got things so screwed up we couldn't issue a bond if we wanted to because they're so upside down. I don't know how the county of Madera is. Hopefully they're better than the state of California as a whole. But it is what it is. And bonds still, if we're going to do a bond, this may be a good time to do it. I would recommend that we get enough money to replenish some money we borrowed out of our reserves, get enough money to kickstart that sinking fund, because we can have that earning interest, not much, but to offset the cost of the bond. We've got a nest egg there, so we don't have to come back and pay the insurance and the issuing of bond costs again in 10 or 15 years from now. And build up a fund. If you're going to get a bond, let's get enough to replenish the coffer so we can move ahead and not have to be borrowing money from somebody every April. We should be able to fund our own cash flow through the year. And so don't another $5 a month or $10 a month would do wonders as far as our capital position on this thing. Looking at the alternatives, it seems you can pay cash. The alternative plan with 3 payments is the same as paying cash. It's $200 difference. That seems like a no-brainer. But the bond thing, if we can get the bonds issued at the right price, that's probably the way to go. And I would urge everybody to get behind this plan before, if we let it go and something happens to the system, it would get very expensive very fast. Thank you.
Thank you. Good points. I just want to add to that. In our calculations, we just had to assume some numbers, some safe numbers for all of you. When it actually goes and the bonds get sold out to the underwriters and they sell it and market it out, the going rate right now is approximately 4% for the bonds, and so that's what the market rate is. But for the report, we had to show something, so we put a figure of 5.5% on the interest rate for the bonds.
My name is Ray Grazer. My parents bought the house up here in 1950. We were on a sewer system. We was the tract. The Falls Tract which was the first group up here that bought the land from PG&E. At that time, after they bought the land, they gave the land to Madera County or traded it for that sewer plant down there. Now, I don't know when this special committee come about, that all of a sudden us people have to pay it. I believe in paying mistakes, but I think the county probably went backwards on being able to keep this facility going. Our problem today in this great nation is all of our governmental people are running out of money and they're looking for the worker to pay the fee. This is not right in this great nation we live in. And all of a sudden, we didn't know anything about this special committee until we got the letter about this being here today. So my first question is, when was it pulled away from the county of Madera? And when you brought up the pool of the condos, this and that was totally a different thing. It's totally different. I've been in some of those things, and I understand that. Because they have a maintenance fee that goes on, and you're told about it being, it's a screwing in the end again. But when did this special committee come about?
As I said before, in 2009 we formed a special committee. You probably didn't hear about it because somebody will not hear about it. Okay, it's just the way it works, unfortunately. If you were a member of the Bass Lake Homeowners Association, I wrote my newsletters about the committee. I've been writing about it for years. Okay. The council, the board of supervisors did bless the committee 6-8 months ago formally. So there was a formal notice in the county records, etc., and the board public hearing and stuff like that. We are an advisory committee. Okay, we have no real power. We represent a bunch of us. We're all homeowners. Okay, so it's just a bunch of us. Yes, essentially. But the board has power. We don't have any power. We just try to help the.
And right now, for the last 2 years, in Oakhurst, there's a tract of homes called Goldside that Madera County has been trying to get them to do the paving on their streets. And Goldside is bucking.
All right, guys, let's keep to our subject here. Let me just very briefly say again what the special district is. If we lived all on 10 acres of land by our house, by ourselves, we'd have our own well, our own septic system. Okay? We'd kind of do our own thing. We'd have that gravel road up to our property. It would be ours, and we'd maintain it. We wouldn't be paying the county or a manager, as I said before, anything to maintain our well, our septic system, our road. Because we are a community, because our lots are right next to each other, we can't have a septic system on each individual lot. For those people who had those way back and lived here long enough, you know that all those septic systems wound up polluting our lake. So our system was built, and it's built through this community effort because we live so close to each other. And that property you were talking about got deeded to the county because somebody had owned this thing, okay? And the laws provided for the county, the government, to be that umbrella agency to own that thing for us, like a trustee owns something. So we own this stuff. Just the county has the actual deed of title to it because they're managing it. If, for some reason, it became privatized, another entity would take over that. They would wind up with the deed, or could wind up with the deed to it. Whoever that is, that trustee, that entity, okay, would run it. You and I, it's ours. We still get to pay the bills on this. Okay, it doesn't come out of our.
Still can step up to the plate and tell them what to do.
Yes, and we do that through our board of supervisors, and we have that input, and that's why we don't want to see this in private tax.
But why did we get so far down the line that this sewer plant got in such bad shape?
Well, it's like anything. How many people want to pay more? Not me. I don't want to pay more, and if I can get away with paying less, I do. But unfortunately today, our 37-year-old system is breaking down on us, guys, and that's our challenge.
I'd like to address the question about the committee and how it got formed. The committee was formed after an open forum here at Bass Lake. It was at the Pines, and the county asked for people to volunteer to work with, to represent the community to work with the county staff toward addressing some of the needs of the sewer system. So it wasn't a secret. We hold monthly open meetings. We did a newsletter last summer. It was posted at the post office. It was sent to members, people who were at Pine Civic Council, who were at different organizations, the Homeowners Association. It wasn't a secret committee. The meetings are open. We're all your neighbors.
Well, I've lived here since 1999. I've got a mailbox.
We had no budget for mailing to everyone, so we tried to post it. It was as a result of a community meeting and open forum.
All right, let's move on to some other questions and stuff.
I'm not clear if some of the money from this is going into, I understand that some of it's going into the savings account, but is some of it also going to be set aside for future improvements so that we don't have this issue 20 years from now?
Yeah, so there's really 3 pots. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Steve? Larry, someone back up real quick.
What number do you want?
Go back to the one that has the budgets on it. One more.
More?
Right there. So we have 3 pots. We have the O&M, the ones that we pay the sewer bills and all the.
That's over.
Oh, sorry, one more. That's over.
One more. Yeah, he's got to go more.
So the sewer O&M, that's the regular sewer charges. That pays for all everything else. Now the bond money will go right into the very bottom one, 532. That'll stay there. It'll be a separate pot. We have to segregate that money separately from all the other monies at the county auditor's office. We have to track it differently. And that money can only be spent on the projects that we're talking about, the $12 million. The one above it, the $60, that one, is the infrastructure replacement fund. So if we fund that, that'll be an additional to what you're paying monthly. And that'll go to a separate savings account. And that will raise about $100,000 a year. And so in about 10 years, we'll have a good chunk of money, about $1 million, 20 years, $2 million. And so we would have a good chunk of money, and over time, we would have enough that you would have to come back for future repairs.
Okay, and then why did you put in the bond repayment at 30 years if you're recommending 20?
I had to stick a number in here to show for an example, and so I stuck 30 here, but if we stick in 50, I mean the 20 year, obviously that would go to $53, so yeah, the monthly would be up to $90. Got a question from one time.
Okay, number one, I paid $390 a year, not $375. And number two, I resent the fact that these people who rent their homes out have people that are 12, 30 people in a home, and they're going to pay the same as I'm going to pay. I have 2 people living in my house 12 months a year, and I resent that. I resent the heck out of that.
You know,
those people make money on their homes, and they will have money to pay for that. I won't. I live on a very limited income, and I resent this. The water company did the same thing to us. All of a sudden, after 20 years, let's triple the price. We're paying $80 a month for water, and now you're going to do this to us on a sewer? It's ridiculous. I resent it. I have lived here for 22 years, and I resent this. I work my family off, and I don't like this happening.
I understand, and actually quite a few people have asked the same question. Some time ago, I crunched some numbers, okay? I said 2 people in a house like yours, pick somebody else who rents their house for 10 weeks during the summer. All right, just let me finish it. And I chunked the numbers back and forth, and I basically said number of people's in the house, days of the year, etc. Believe it or not, you would be paying less. I'm sorry. The vacation owner, the renter, would be paying less than the residents, because technically, the number of people in the house, occupied days, etc., are less than if you lived in the house yourself all year round. Now, you have a good point. They make some money off their house, but gosh, what do we want to do? Do we want to survey bedrooms and bathrooms and toilets, and do we have to send inspectors into people's houses to figure out who should pay more, who should pay less, how many people live in that house, how many days it's rented, how much somebody's making on our house. We just don't have a system to do that. The only system that we have in place today is, as a single homeowner, I own one sewer unit. You own one sewer unit. We have that in place. We don't have metered water. I used to live in Southern California. Metered water. My sewer bill tracked my water use. We don't have that system here. We don't have to pay the cost of reading meters and fixing meters and all that. So we actually have some economies there. So the only thing that we have to go by to charge people for in any way to do this fairly is by the fact that you own a sewer unit. It's all divided by sewer units. And everybody who owns a sewer unit, whether they're connected or not, will pay for these repairs and
I think
fixes.
you said there was 800 units?
There's 1,770 or
1813, yes.
Does that include
That's,
across the lake?
that,
Any of that?
that includes everybody within our geographical boundary who owns a sewer unit. It actually runs around the lake all the way out to Washon.
But does it include the campground?
Yes, it includes the campgrounds, and the Forest Service will have to pay their part. Everybody's the same. The commercial buildings are part of the system. They have quite a few more sewer units than like a house does. They have a pro rata system where like a hotel room is maybe, I don't know, half a sewer unit, whatever it is. But everybody will pay the same. You own that sewer unit, you'll pay your part of it. Everybody's the same. See if I want to go back and get some.
Hi, did you calculate it at 4%? That would be a substantial difference. That's my first question. And then also, where would funds go for future development? I know by that Falls tract, the school is for sale, and the county also has 10 acres for sale. Say that sells to a big developer, at least 100 more lots. What happens to that initial money? I guess you can't really prepay a bond.
And so let's talk about future improvements. And this was talked with the committee and what they wanted to do with this too. And the treatment plant, when it was built, they had a specific design capacity, specific amount of sewer flows it could take. And they associate those to all specific number of sewer units. And so the county has not added additional sewer units or added capacity to the system. And the committee said as part of this, we don't want to add capacity, we want to add additional sewer units. We're going to use what we have. And so, like, for example, if the county sold that piece of property and they developed 200 lots out of it, I don't know if they could, but if they did, then they would have to do an engineered study and figure out what their impacts are above and beyond what their normal allotted flows would be, and they would have to make improvements to the system on their own. Pipelines, lift stations, treatment plants, they would have to mitigate their project impacts and make those additional improvements and not share that burden to the rest of the community that already has paid for an existing system.
Should you design the system though initially to handle it? We're at 1,800 now. Shouldn't you might as well be thinking to the future, at least design it for 23 or 400, right?
And we talked about that in the community setting.
The area is geographically covered, and all the properties have been pretty much developed. So there's not a lot of opportunity to expand the system. It's not like we have open land that some developer is going to come in and buy land and be sort of. There's 250 or almost 300 units that are not being used today, and they can be sold and traded back and forth to meet various needs. So we didn't really want to build the system up any more than we need to. We just need to kind of fix it. One of the items that's important that we will be doing is adding what we call an equalization tank. That tank will help us on those holiday periods. The system really is big enough to handle our needs. It's the holiday periods that hurt us. So we manage that, and we don't have to actually increase the system's capacity.
And regarding the 4%, when we actually go to the bonds, and actually bonds get sold, they will send out actual amounts to everybody that's going to have one. And so we'll know exactly what it is per house before it happens.
Hello, Mayor. Okay, my name is Bob Hilliard. The question I have, you're saying it's cost $12 million. Now, this is to bring it up to code, just to make it feasible for what we've got now, or for any future growth?
Just what we have now, just what we have now.
Okay, and he stated that this, most of the area is pretty well developed. There's talk of building 47 condos behind the post office there, that 10 acres back there. That's going to increase a lot of flow too. And are they taking that into consideration if that goes through?
Yeah, we did. In fact, those are those extra sewer units I just mentioned that are not actually connected. A little bit of history would be that when the system was built, you know, if you had a house, you got a unit. If you had some land, you got units related to the amount of parcels or the size of the property. So the whole system got divvied up that way. So that space up there that's now open land was allotted some units.
It was a lot of 10 units, correct?
Right.
Okay, 47 condos do not equal 10 units.
And that's a little bit of the horse trading that goes on behind the scenes between property owners, et cetera. But nevertheless, the system was paid for by everybody who actually received units. So whether you had 10 units for that parcel or 40, way back then, you paid for that. You have the right to connect to the system if you own sewer units today. Okay, you paid for that original plant to be built, and through the upgrade, whether you connect today or not, you'll also be asked to pay for your portion of it.
Yeah, but my question is though, if you're only allowing 10 sewer units, 10 sewer units at 10 acres back there behind the post office, okay, and there's going to be 47 condos on it. Each condo carries a unit, correct?
It's a little prorated unit. I don't think it's a full unit, but it's like a.
Why wouldn't it be if it's a 2-bedroom, 3-bath, or 2-bedroom, 3-bath, or vice versa?
It depends.
I think each of the condos would be its own unit.
And
well,
so
now you're talking about 47 units, though, and that's not considered, that's not factored into your figures.
And so to answer that question, what the developer, the owner of that parcel needs to do in order to have those additional homes or hookups is he has to go out and find. There's still some standby units that are out there but have not connected onto the system. We have to go out and purchase those units from somebody else, so you have additional sewer unit rights to hook up, and so you would need to go and purchase those.
Are these standby units considered into this bonding factor?
What was that?
Are the standby units you have
yes.
considered into the bonding factor?
What percentage of the units are actually being used then?
About 85%. It's about 15% sewer units not being used yet, and so this one I didn't go over it, but basically whoever has an active sewer unit only pays the operating maintenance cost. If you have a standby unit, a unit that does not hook up it, obviously you would pay operation maintenance because you're not having any flow, so you wouldn't be paying that. But also all the active sewer units pay the O&M cost. Infrastructure depreciation fund, all the sewer units would pay that $60 a year, because whether you're on the system or not on the system, by the time you hook up, the infrastructure is depreciating. You need to replace pumps, replace those. Everybody needs to share in that cost of funding the infrastructure replacement cost. The bond repayment, if you have a sewer unit, yes, you still have to pay the bond cost, because if you're in the bond for it, you still have to pay the cost of making those improvements. So everybody shares those. The only thing that the standbys don't pay is they would not be paying the actual operational maintenance cost down those sewer flows.
Let me just be really clear. We call this an upgrade. It's an upgrade to our existing facilities. It's not an expansion to add more sewer units. Okay, we're not expanding the gallons flows through the plant. We're just making that more efficient and handling our peak holidays. This is not to allow hundreds and thousands of homes to be built and connected to the system. It is just fixing it, compliance and efficiencies.
Teresa Wilson, I own a vacant lot in this tract that'll be affected by the sewer plant upgrade. I also live full-time in Marina View. To address the woman's concern about two people living in a home versus the homes that are rented, just want to say that everyone that owns a sewer unit, myself included, on a vacant lot, so I have nobody using it, will be paying the same amount. So it's equality, equity in a system that whether we're using it currently or at what rate we're using it, we all have ownership of this sewer plant. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Got a question over here? Tom? Okay.
we have an entity that has 3 sewer units that we do not use. Now, is there a provision that we can give those back, sell them, not pay for them?
Yeah, so there is ability to sell your sewage to someone that wants to buy them. So you have to find a willing buyer, and then what happens is that transaction needs to get approved by the board of supervisors. And so you need to find a willing buyer and a willing seller, and write a letter to the county saying I want to sell X amount of units from parcel X to parcel B, and then the county will take it over and move it to the board of supervisors. All the sewage have to be approved by the board of supervisors, so that we don't have any sewer unit flipping, we don't have any sewer unit hoarding, and so these things can be regulated by the board, and also overcharging for the sewer unit pricing as well. So, question over here, please.
My name is Bill Shutter. My question deals with the reserve and how much is going every month into savings?
Right now?
Well, no, under this proposal. How much are you putting away? Or maybe I'll ask it for the year.
Yeah.
How much every year are you saving for depreciation?
And so for per sewer unit, it's $60 a year or $5 a month.
No, I mean, how much will the total be?
The total will be $108,000.
$100,000 a year?
$100,000 a year.
And in 20 years, we'll have what? $2 million to replace what you're telling us now is a $12 million replacement cost. So we're going to have a $10 million.
Well,
is that the problem?
There's a couple pieces to this. One is meeting that regulatory compliance. Fixing the spray fields is really expensive, and also fixing the pond is very expensive too. What we really don't have money for is that main line that's on North Shore or under the lake that might break, whatever, and the whole section has to be replaced at $250,000 a pop, or $500,000 a pop. And what this extra money will do will give us the ability to replace those big items as time goes on. And we don't have that fund now. If we started collecting $100,000 a year 37 years ago, we'd have $3.7 million we could take off that $12 million bill.
But we still have to have this meeting to make up the $9 million difference. As we're going to have this meeting again, I probably won't be here for that one. 20 years from now, you're going to have another meeting asking essentially the same thing, only the numbers will be at least as great.
You know, in my condo example, going back to that, if you lived in a condo, you know that they said that roof was good for 20 years. And in 20 years, there will be enough money to replace it. If we really charge you what it was going to take to replace this entire system in 20 years, you probably throw stuff at us. Okay, the $100,000 I think is just a token amount to really bring us up to the replacement value of the system in 20 years.
Right. So 100 is going to be enough to take care of ongoing expenses and replacement costs that are the same as are now being fixed.
Correct. And you can see, like in the previous, when we did the budgets, we were short about $100,000, and that's because we were replacing pumps, electrical stuff, and so pipes. And so that's about $100,000. So that's what I did. I mean, I understand we're going to have a lot of people on fixed income, and so when I put these numbers together, this is what I felt is a safe number that is not too far out there. But yes, there is still going to be some shortfalls. Yes.
My name is Bruce Becker. 2 questions. One thing about the spray fields, the Forest Service lease, is that going on for X amount of years? Does that have to be renewed or going to start a new one? And another one was on the lift stations. Is there going to be upgrade to the pipework itself or just the pumps itself? And another thing, if you have them on VFDs, is the controlling means done at the site or is it done back at the main control house area? Because those have, I mean, if you're doing remotely, it's one thing. If you're doing like a hard flow wire thing, you have to run conduit back and forth. That's a lot more work. I'm not trying to be tie you up or anything.
So there's a couple questions here. The first one was the spray field. So we have a lease there. The lease has expired in 2009, and we're working with the Forest Service to extend that for another long-term lease. Long-term 99 years, 30 years, 50 years, something long. So hopefully we have to go buy more property. And then regarding the VFDs and the lift stations, maybe we're seeing answers to those.
To answer your question, yes, we're planning for the VFDs, and that's why the expense for all those lift stations, if you could see our poster board out there, was so expensive. We're going to run new conduit, it's new motor controls, new everything. So they're essentially going to be almost brand new lift stations.
The controlling means will be at the main control area or at each remote site? Excuse me.
They're at each remote site, but they'll have SCADA units which will be able to monitor remotely, so that if something happens, they'll let us know before we get there what's going on. So.
Can I add to that also? Is there any provision for backup power because since there's power outages?
Yes, we are planning for surge power control to make sure that they can handle the lightning strikes that are known to affect the area, the outages.
And right now, most of our stuff does have backup power already. So.
Mine isn't necessarily a question. My name's Tom T. I would just really endorse the 20-year bond because it would deal with the other gentleman's question about having to do this again in 20 years. I wouldn't want to be doing it again in 20 years and still owe money on this bond.
Right.
So we want to have that clear. The other thing is it's important to know that that 20-year is going to be a lot less costly over the long term than the 30. You're going to get a lower interest rate, of course, it's not going to be. All right, exactly. So, it's ours. We own it. We have to do it. None of us like it, but we got to do this.
Very, very good. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jack Bridenstine, permanent resident of Bass Lake. I want to get back to this Forest Service lease. You mentioned that, I wrote it down here, that we have 105 acres that we lease, but we only use 28.
That's correct, and the reason for that is because if you notice, I mean, there's a lot. The terrain isn't very cooperative for our spray field, so there's only certain areas that are usable for the spray field area itself. Right now, we're only utilizing about 30 acres of that land. There's an additional 30 that we're supposed to be using, but because of the terrain, it's not so conducive for irrigation. And so what we're going to be needing to do is expand some of the other areas to make sure that we can use the 60 acres that we really need for the irrigation disposal.
So why did we lease the other acreage?
You know, that was something that was determined way back in 1974. And so that I'm not really sure.
Well, I guess the other part of the question is, we're leasing it from the U.S. Forest Service, and they must have, what, 20-some sewer hookups?
200. 220,
they have
actually.
200?
That's correct.
So they're actually charging themselves for leasing their own land?
They will be, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, for anybody that's interested in a lot of details on what this $12 million is for, the full 400 and some pages of the last engineering report, hard copy is available at the Homeowners Association office, online.
It's online.
Through Madera County. So if you want to know, I mean, we didn't know how many people would be interested in the specific details of what's proposed for each of the lift stations, for the pipes, for all that, but if you want that information, it's available. And remember, these monthly meetings are open. Everyone is welcome to come. We appreciate your input. The other thing I wanted to comment, I think, if I understand correctly, having been on the committee, the school, your question about the school has been allotted a certain number of sewer units. I think it's 4 or 5. So if anyone wanted to buy that property and wanted to do some massive development, they would have to do it within those 4 or 5 units unless they bought more somewhere, like from the gentleman who has some for sale. Correct?
Yes. You know, the county's not going to let a property owner sell all their units because then the property's not developable, doesn't make sense anymore. So
County ordinance requires that the property at least maintain 1 sewer unit so that if they ever decide to put a house on it, they have the ability to, and not leave that parcel with no ability to be able to connect. So there is a minimum requirement of 1 sewer unit.
It's my understanding the county presently owns 20 to 30 sewer units, is that correct?
Correct. The county has a 10-acre parcel over here, and they had 30 sewer units. and we sold 10 sewer units to the Miller's Resort. We sold another one or half a unit to one to a property that was that subdivided his parcel, and then we sold another half a unit to a person that was expanding their house and had a mother-in-law so they had to get another half.
So they are for sale?
They are for sale.
At 8,000 per unit?
Yeah, 8,096 per unit, yes. And those negotiations need to happen with the CEO's office and the board of supervisors. We can certainly assist in that process, but that's a county budget issue, and so you have to negotiate that with the county.
And the county presently owns about 100 acres behind the school?
Is it 100 acres, Steve? You guys know?
Is that not correct?
I don't think the county owns that land back behind the school.
Forest Service.
That's Forest Service, and there's a private property owner, I think owns about
The county
38. No, not the county.
Owns 100 acres.
Not that I saw it. I could be wrong.
Okay, that's my understanding. They're attempting to sell it, so. I was
They
curious.
it may not be within the bounds of the sewer system, so there's not assigning any sewage, but we'll double check. But
Portions of it. Thank you.
That's another question with regard to this county property. Did the county buy those to sell at later dates for other people that wanted to develop their property, or were they going to do something with it?
No, when the system was created in 1974, 1976, 10 sewage units was allocated. I mean, 30 sewage was allocated to that piece of property that the county had, and so they must have paid through the same fashion that you guys all did to attain those sewer units. They were.
So they must have planned on developing the property at that time, they're not going to now, do you know? Or?
They a lot of times when they did these sewer unit allocations at the time, it was kind of based on the size of your property, kind of how much they thought you would develop out of it, and so that's kind of how people got assigned sewer units when they originally created it. So somebody came up at that point in time and said 30 sewer units could go there on a 10-acre parcel, basically about three units per acre, looking at probably 50,000 square foot lots or something like that. So. Or maybe a little greater, so that's kind of what they were thinking.
The reason I asked it, I've had people ask me, yeah, you can't buy a sewer unit, but evidently the county is still selling those units?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Question back there.
A couple of comments. You know, we've had essentially unlimited water up here forever, and some of us have not taken up the low flow shower head or the low flow toilets. I don't know if a program like that would help our sewer flow capacity issue, or would it make it more sludgy and harder to pump? I don't know, but it's something maybe we should look at this point. Second thing, you mentioned variable speed pumps. Are we currently getting off-peak power from PG&E? Is there a way to move our high electric bills from peak to off-peak as part of this project and save some money?
Basically, PG&E sees us as a commercial user, and they charge us. We're going to be the time of use rates. Basically, the peak hours between 8 to 5, we get charged a higher rate for using electricity.
Are we currently getting a discount by working pumps more at night? And if not, can we put that into the new project so that we can get lower rates at night?
Well, the pumps are pushing the flows that are coming through there. So if there's no flows, it's operating.
You'd have to store the pump and then pump later, but you could also pump up to the spray field at night and get discount on that. Anyway, I think we ought to look at any way to save money operationally while we're doing this and put the money in the infrastructure.
We did, as part of the project, we're going to be doing some energy saving efforts at the treatment plant with bubble diffusers, micro diffusers, so reducing less power and pumps to push the water and air into the wastewater treatment plant. So, give a question. So the next thing is we're going to be moving to voice your opinions and comments as well to the board of supervisors.
When did all that add up to being have to be around the vote?
So to be around the vote, it's going to be between July and the end of August. So the ballots will probably be going out July sometime, and then the end of August is when the voting actually gets done. That's the deadline to submit your dates.
The vote will be done by mail. Everybody who owns a sewer unit will receive a written mailed ballot. There won't be a polling place.
These figures are based on a 30-year bond, correct?
Correct.
Would you not this moment, but recalculate that on a 20-year bond so the people can see the savings and see the...
Yeah, if you go back to the previous slides, they're also on the presentation handouts. But there's the monthly charge increased by about $9 and some change. The interest savings is about $6 million a month. And again, this is all on the estimated 5.5%. Obviously, when we go fund it, it's going to be possibly a lot lower at 4%. But we want to give you guys good numbers, and if anything, the numbers got less.
So the 20-year payment at 5.5% is 647. At 4%, that would be slightly less.
More. Up, down, up.
Can I just, I know there's a lot of information here, you haven't digested it all, but can develop the 20, 30, 40-year scenario of a bond. Supervisors will make that ultimate decision, but how about just a showing of hands with whatever information you have? Would you prefer a 20, 30, or 40-year deal? I mean, just like I said, so just raise your hand if you're interested in a 20-year thing. All right. And then raise your hand if you're interested in a 30-year thing. Or a 40-year. So there's some...
That'll help. That'll help.
Something to send to the supervisor.
We'll start working.
Okay. For those people who might just want to cash out and do it right now, get it done with? Wow. And save some money. Yeah, and we only can do that if the ballot passes, to prepay it like that. That's where your savings is, to do that.
Steve, there has been so much information passed around here today that I'm getting boggled with details. Could you possibly write a synopsis of this and send it out to the homeowners association?
There's 400 pages of synopsis, but yes, in my
just capsulate it, like you were a secretary.
Yes, I will do that for those of you who are homeowner members for the Bass Lake Homeowners Association. I'll do that. If you're not, join. Sorry. But the county is a resource too, and whether you're, all of us committee members, we all live in the community here or are available to you also. Feel free to contact us as well. You can find us through contacting the county as well. I'll be happy to sit down. I'm sure any of us would be happy to sit down and explain to you.
So if there's any additional questions that the committee may have after this meeting, you can reach the county by calling 311 or 675-7817. Ask for myself or Christina. The video, this meeting will be recorded and posted on the website. The reports are already on the website. A lot of information is already on the website, so I recommend you go look at that first. And if you have any additional questions, it's www.madera-county.com.
The website was also on your notice. There's a link for that on your notice.
I have a question. Since
Yes.
most people voted for the 20-year bond, could you go back to that page, or do you have the statistics of what it would cost us a year annually on a 20-year bond, just so we have an idea?
You know what number slide?
You know what's still working? You go down.
Yeah.
One more. One more. One more. under the 20-year, 30-year, and 40-year. And so this is based on 5.5%. This is based on 5.5%, and assuming $14 million gets bonded for it. There was a lot of hands raised that they're going to be paying their bonds ahead of time, so the actual amount to be financed may be a lot less than that. So just let you know. The interest, yeah. So that's the interest paid onto it. So.
Page 9.
Page 9 on the handouts. Handouts. Page 9 on the handouts.
Any other questions? We'll wrap it up.
Yes, the county has a program. We'll continue to work more on it. It's called the fats and oils and greases, FOG, and to help reduce fats and oils and greases in the system and something like that. So, and so we'll work on doing some more public outreach on that. I'll work with Steve on doing that, and I recommend that you know, for you guys all attending, I recommend you guys continue to participate in the process, stay engaged, work with Steve. We have our monthly meetings here at the HOA. That's like HOA office just down the hill there. The second Wednesday, every second Wednesday of every month at 2 o'clock.
Ken, there was a question in the audience. The question was the security of the bond. Why would residents of Madera all be held liable for the bond?
No, what they will do is they will use the district itself, this district itself, and also the county board of supervisors, the county umbrella. And so because they're going to assess every single parcel, the majority of the holding is going to be all the ratepayers of this district. They'll actually use our finances, our books for this district to carry the bond. And the county board of supervisors is ultimately the overlaying agency, so they will have a part of their responsibility too.
We've got a question here.
Hi, actually, I just had two questions. One, a gentleman earlier mentioned something about possible cost-saving ideas, and I'm curious in terms of the financial, what kind of fiscal oversight is there on the past spending and on future spending? Is there an audit that's done on these books, or how do we know that there's no misappropriation or waste? And then my second question is, in terms of the $12 million, what was the process of getting that bid, and is there any possibility of reduced costs there, or any of that?
Okay, so let's first talk about what the current process is. The county gets audited annually, and so we report those to the state, and the districts get audited annually. What is the checks and balances? Steve and I are the checks and balances. We have managers and supervisors. They become part of the system's checks and balances to minimize waste and abuse and overuse of the system. And then in addition to that, we have the committee that do a great job of keeping us on tab as well. So that's why I say recommend participate, stay engaged in the system, get engaged with the committee, help them help us stay on task. Because without a lot of squeaky wheels, you're not going to get what you need. And so we need to stay focused as well. So with that engagement, and the committee's done a great job in reviewing this report. And there was a lot of things, a lot of good discussions happened. There was already a lot of good cost reductions going through the process that the committee already went through and ruled it out. And so as far as getting to bids, we can't get to there yet. We can't get bids because we don't have any plans and specs to get competitive apples to apples bids on them. But what we do have is we have engineers that do this work all over the country, all over the state. They've done it before. They know what the costs are at today's rate, and they've given us those in their engineers' estimates and in their reports.
And as part of the work we've done, there's been energy audits, specifically looking at potential cost savings through PG&E and private consultants that have looked at. And one in particular that the committee looked at in conjunction with the county, that it looked like
so that's really the main part of the checks and balances, having a community, and that's why, back in 2009, the county decided, it's important to stay engaged with the community, know what the issues are, know what the concerns are, to know what the priorities are, and so they worked with the community to create this a volunteer Bass Lake Advisory Committee, and we talk about all these issues, and the committee makes some recommendations and advises the county on how to act, because we need to know what you guys are concerned about, what's important to you, and so we're really grateful that the committee was here and helped us develop this plan together and address a lot of the comments that we weren't even aware of when we started the process. So.
All right, can we wrap it up? Any more questions? Thank you, everybody, for coming, and again, find us, talk to us, we'll be glad to answer any other questions in the future.